During the last 10 weeks, our group has been working with Encina Prep High School. The students here range from 6th to 12th grade. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the students are doing distance learning. Because of this, we did not have the opportunity to meet with the students in person. Through our weekly meetings with their liaison to the school, Barry Roth, we were able to learn about the culture of the school and its students and staff. From what we learned and assessed, our group decided to focus our attention on the self-care of the students during their time of social isolation. Self-care is extremely important, especially during stressful times. This is why we found it beneficial to promote this for the students.
Hello, my name is Hina Mehendi Ratta and I will be talking about population demographics of Encina High School. When we see ethnicity at Encina High School, it is quite diverse as evidenced by our windshield survey. For example, the banners outside the school gate were in three languages: English, Spanish, and Farsi. The statistics by the Department of Education for the year 2019-20 shows the predominant ethnic groups are Hispanics, African Americans, Asians, and among Asians, Persians were most in number, and whites. For socio-economic data, substantial number of students, which is 96%, participate in free and reduced lunch programs. 17% participate in McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Program, and 37% students participate in ELD service. This service is for the students who speak English as their second language. During our windshield survey, we came across various health resources, youth resources, and mentorship programs. For health resources, Encina community has UC Davis Medical Center and Kaiser Permanente office within less than 6 miles radius. They have various acupuncture, mental health services, women health centers, and dental office within 5 miles. The youth resources were Black Child Legacy, which focus on the reducing the morbidity rate of African American children, the White House Counseling for Mental Health Services, English Learner and Multicultural Education Department, which helps with English learners to develop proficiency. The strength of Encina High School students is that the students have appropriate support from the Encina staff. There are community resources available for them, as I mentioned, and they are very resilient. Thank you.
Distance learning has led to increased isolation and a disruption in normal learning. These measures lead to stress, anxiety, and a feeling of helplessness in all. Children and adolescents have especially felt the implications of COVID. The thought is that children and adolescents will suffer from long-term consequences. Because of this, mental health is of serious concern during this pandemic. Through our literature review, we found some commonalities that children and adolescents have experienced during this time. It was found that the home confinement of children and adolescents is associated with uncertainty and anxiety, which is attributable to disruption in their education, physical activities, and opportunities for socialization. During the lockdown, children and adolescents have experienced increased irritability, inattention, and clinging behavior, disturbed sleep, nightmares, poor appetite, agitation, uncertainty, boredom, anxiety, and fear. COVID-19 stress is related to more loneliness and depression. For adolescents, the effects of this stress may be heightened due to important developmental characteristics. Adolescents are very concerned about the COVID-19 crisis and are particularly worried about schooling and peer relationships as well as their reputation. Adolescents are even concerned about family finances. Given this high level of concern in the adolescent population, finding ways to lessen the effects on depressive symptoms and loneliness is essential for avoiding chronic mental illness. Vulnerable factors such as age, educational status, pre-existing mental health conditions, fear of infection, and coming from a lower socioeconomic family contribute to mental health. adolescents from a lower socioeconomic family, like many of the students at Encina, have a higher chance of adverse effects because there's a higher probability that they will be deprived of nutrition, protection, and a secure home. Special attention needs to focus on the most vulnerable, economically, socially, and emotionally. Activities that promote social contact and the avoidance of loneliness are beneficial. Some examples of coping skills are staying in touch with family and friends via technology, exercise, meditation, self-care, and sleep. Surveillance of mental health problems and introducing coping skills is paramount to promoting good mental health and self-care.
Hi, I'm Parveen, and I'm going to speak on my part, epidemiologic triangle. So in epidemiologic triangle, we have three things to discuss. First is host. In our situation, the host is students of Encina prep experiencing self-care deficits. And the agent is psychological stressor due to COVID-19. And environment is COVID, climate, and social isolation. So the nursing diagnosis of our current state problem is self-care deficit related to ineffective coping skills and greatly diminished resources due to COVID-19 isolation and the complexities of the distance learning as evidenced by food insecurity, limited physical activities, limited social interaction, and limited personal space. So, our outcome goal for this CAP project is the students of Encina High School will demonstrate ongoing improved self care physically, mentally, socially, and emotionally in order to better cope during this time of social isolation. In regards to the Healthy People 2020 objectives, our goal is to reduce the proportion of adolescents aged 12 to 17 years who experience major depressive episodes and increase the proportion of elementary, middle, and senior high school that provide school health education in growth and development to promote personal health and wellness.
For interventions, we created a way for students to have an opportunity to meet with us for a 2-to-1 mentoring session. In order to ensure students knew about this resource, we created a flyer that went out in the announcements for students to view. A forum was created where students can reach out by answering questions about their self-care and what things make them feel grateful during these times. This was created as a way to evaluate how students were feeling and how they might be dealing with the virtual learning and recent day-to-day changes due to COVID. We also added a new tab on the Encina website that's full of helpful self-care resources, including phone apps that promote calmness, websites that have free creativity ideas and ways to stay organized, and even a site that allows students to make free beats and music. Our primary prevention was informing students with the flyer about the self-care tab to provide preventative resources to ensure students maintain a healthy state of mind while learning from home. This gives students knowledge about resources if and when they experience mental health stressors. Our secondary prevention was screening students from Encina during mentoring sessions via Zoom. We also were able to assess how students were feeling by reading their responses to the questions posted in the forum. And our tertiary prevention was, after screening the students, we could determine who may need to be referred to the resources on the website for further promotion of self-care. We can also speak to Noelle, the school nurse at Encina, about students we think who may need to be further assessed.
Evaluation. In order to determine the effectiveness of the self-care resources, our team designed a follow-up survey for Encina students and community members to provide real-time feedback. This feedback will be used in conjunction with feedback received by the team from students who attended the self-peer mentoring classes. The forum will be evaluated for effectiveness based on the number of community responses and page visits. The 5-question general survey assesses what aspects of the self-care resources students and community members found to be most beneficial in optimizing their own self-care. Additionally, the survey provides a section where participants can include any information that they would like to see included to the site. This feedback is integral in ensuring the quality and efficacy of the provided resources. Further allowing students and community members to have a voice in the ongoing development of the site serves to engender a sense of community and inclusion, an aspect we felt was paramount to our efforts and intended goals. Due to the dynamic nature of the site, evaluation of the effectiveness will be continuous and ongoing. The difficulties imposed upon us by COVID created an inability to introduce the site in as timely of a manner as we had initially intended, and thus we were not able to effectively garner sufficient student participation prior to the termination of our rotation. As the site evolves and becomes more personalized to the students of Encina Prep, it is our recommendation that future Samuel Merritt cohorts coordinate with Encina Prep teaching staff to deliver 2 additional surveys measuring the overall knowledge of students pertaining to self-care. One survey will be administered at the beginning of a semester in order to establish a baseline, and then a follow-up will be delivered near the end of the semester to gauge if student knowledge had increased.
Hello, this is Aaron Fisher, and we are working with Barry Roth, Encino Prep High School's coordinator for community school advocacy out in Sacramento. We're working with Encino because of the student and family base at the school, as well as the neighborhood with which the school resides. We know that this particular community is, as we explained earlier, is economically challenged, and they don't have computers for the most part, so they're using their phones. And they're having to do this remote connection amongst their larger family, where there are obviously other students that are also trying to do their learning. That in itself is challenging. The way we decided to address that was, first of all, to provide a new tab called Self-Care, and it provides a myriad of options that the student can download or directly use to provide opportunities to self-soothe. And we additionally, a more direct task that we wanted to address was looking at these students' age group and considering Erik Erikson's identity versus role confusion. Then also Maslow's hierarchy of needs, looking at the physiological safety, love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. In this particular scenario, it's kind of a pairing of Erik Erikson's identity role confusion with the safety, love, and belonging and esteem. We know that these adolescents are at a point in their life where they are now normally communing with each other and learning how to mitigate and to work with each other, so that when they eventually make it into the real adult world, we already had this set. But in this COVID climate of social isolation, they're not as capable of doing that. To be perfectly blunt, these teenagers they normally would be dealing with hygiene and clothing issues, or just having a case of acne, and basically still having to go to school and still have to kind of deal with those kind of situations. But in this social climate where they have their webcams off, they're not really doing that. So, and due to the uncertainty of the home environment, it makes sense that they would be doing this, but it's still something to possibly be investigated further, possibly using virtual backgrounds or something like that. So given that deficit of not being able to be face-to-face and be able to interact right next to each other and having to mitigate those kind of things, what we chose to do was to create a forum that allows these students to interact, actually try different things, and outside their usual Facebook and Instagram, but still within the virtual construct of a school community. And the SMU Encino Prep collaboration site made the most sense because we've already provided the self-care tab. So it would be a normal organic progression to go to. We were struggling in this COVID climate. The greatest issue is the fact that with COVID, the upstream issue was the staff only had a very limited time with the students, and to try and find ways to introduce an unknown variable such as my group into that mix downstream, while eventually advantageous, would have been initially and immediately difficult and disadvantageous. So it's understandable. What I would recommend going forward, though, is being able to actually have a more informal discussion between some key educators and the students in the upcoming SMU cohort, providing opportunities for kind of brainstorming and offering of ideas. Um, I would say of what my groups witnessed with the one mentoring session that I and Devin took part in, seems like it's a good school. Um, and I just think that with this climate that we're all going through, providing them with those kind of tools to self-soothe also offers them the opportunity to hand that up to their families as well. And I think overall, I do still think that this is a benefit to the community.